Give me your, because you have been, I mean, you've been one of the leading voices in this fight against executive amnesty, and Texas as a state as a whole has been leading the fight legally against it as well. Give me your thoughts on this Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, their decision. This is the second big legal decision now against his executive amnesty.
It was completely appropriate for the Fifth Circuit panel to do what they did. Three-judge panel. They upheld the temporary injunction, which to uphold that injunction, they had to find that the plaintiffs were likely to win, probably going to win, and so this was an appropriate action to hold things in the situation they were in. But courts look at all kinds of things, appellate courts, when they're looking at a decision, especially for an injunction, because that's an extraordinary measure when a court takes that measure. Yeah. And Judge Hainan in the Southern District of Texas, went to law school with him, one of the tops in our class, just smart guy, but he took that extraordinary measure. Well, then we had the National Defense Authorization Act that we just voted through, and there was an amendment added in the wee hours of the night.
You were telling me about this. This almost ruined everything.
Well, we had to really battle to get it out of there, and it seemed simple enough.
What was the amendment?
It basically was because of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, the illegal unconstitutional amnesty, the Defense Department should give them additional consideration, allowing them to enlist. Well, an appellate court can take judicial notice of anything that passes a legislature. Normally, you can only consider things that come up through the trial court.
Right.
But if a legislature passes something, you can take judicial notice. And we fought to try to get that out. If everybody's voting, you need 218 to win a vote. We had 221 that voted to remove that language. And what I kept trying to get people to understand on the floor is, if you leave that language in, then the Fifth Circuit can consider that and say, Congress just voted. The more conservative House just voted to say DACA is important. We need them in the military. And since the House has now, for the first time, spoken on the president's unconstitutional amnesty, they're okay with it. They're saying, let's put these folks in the military. Therefore, if I were on the Fifth Circuit and that had passed the House, I would have had to say, I don't think it's appropriate, this amnesty, but the House has now said, we're okay with it. We want these people to join the military. And I would have lifted the temporary injunction. I would have, because Congress would have expressed its will. The Constitution says Congress has control over naturalization, immigration type things. And if we had passed that, it was that close. And so, anyway, sometimes I think that ultrasounds ought to be mandatory for everybody's brain to see if they have one in Congress.
I hope they get that quote right. I hope they get his quote right when they quote him. They ought to.
There's no telling where that'll go. But everybody's head ought to have an ultrasound to see if there's anything there.
Now, this, I mean, obviously, this is, they're going to appeal this. They're going to appeal this judge's opinion.
Well, there were indications the White House might not, but see, this is only a preliminary decision because the trial has not yet occurred at the trial court level, and so this is a preliminary injunction. That's why it's temporary during the course of the trial, and until there is a trial that's had, then it'll go up on actual appeal. So. I don't think the White House has decided for sure whether they're even going to appeal this decision.
Are they seeing maybe that the tide's turning against them? I mean, they already have 2 legal decisions now against them.
Well, it would make sense that they ought to spend more time. Of course, I think they ought to just
stop it entirely. That would be great.
Entirely.
Yeah. Let Congress
but if you believe what they did, then they would probably want to concentrate more on the trial and not losing the trial.
Yeah, they like to legislate, though, from the executive office. And one of the other things that you've been following.
And by the way, I was talking about the men, too, especially the men having their brain ultrasound.
Look, see, make sure you get that in when you guys quote him.
I'm looking forward to how the quotes go after
You never
this.
know anymore, right?